Hey folks, Dr. Emily here. I am super excited to talk to you today about how to learn a language or a framework in a weekend. So this is a critical skill for any technologist or professional software developer because technology changes fast and you need to be able to keep up with what's happening. And the way we do that is by actually, being able to pick up new technologies and skills quickly. So if you're here, let me know, drop it in the chat. And my first question is, has anyone had this before? Right? Have you ever tried to learn a new language or framework in a weekend? So drop it below. I can't wait to see your comments and to see, right, if like what that experience has been like for you. And I want to make sure that I address it with you today. If you're watching this replay, no worries, drop a comment and I'll get back to you. So what we're looking to do today is to learn how to prepare new skills for interviews and projects fast, like really fast. Okay, so what does this look like? What does this look like? So first of all, the first question is, what skills should we be learning? Right? So we want to learn skills in a weekend to prepare for job interviews, right? Maybe you have an interview coming up. Maybe you're just trying to make yourself look more employable. So which skills do you pick, right? What skill is so important to learn in a weekend, right? So these are all the skills that you could learn right now or that a job ad could potentially ask for. Now, if you feel a little overwhelmed by this picture, it's okay. I get it, right? This is why people get stuck, right? If you look at this picture and it's overwhelming, don't worry, it's not you. Then we need to get you to the place where this picture looks exciting. Oh my goodness, there's so much I could learn, right? If you feel overwhelmed looking at this image, we need to give you the fundamental foundations to really look at this as an exciting opportunity versus like, oh my God, this is so much to learn. It's so much work, because it's not that much work. Because at the end of the day, no one is going to ask you to use all of these technologies at the same time. Typically, you would integrate one or two new technologies in small pieces as you do different projects as you go. So technology is a space where we learn as we go. And if you don't feel comfortable and confident learning on your own, then we need to give you that firm foundation so you can. All right. And again, if you're just tuning in, if you've tried to learn a language in a weekend, drop a comment so that I can see that. And I want to make sure that we can help, really revolutionize your experience to learn these skills faster. Right? So any of these skills are super simple. And keep in mind, when we're learning, there's many different levels of learning, right? There's, I can print out Hello World. There's, I can create a simple to-do app. There's, I can recreate Airbnb or YouTube, right? Those are very different levels. So when we say learn in a weekend, and I'm not saying get to expert mastery on all these technologies in a weekend. I'm saying, okay, we're going to take one technology or framework, maybe two, like, HTML and CSS kind of go together, right? So there might be some technologies that pair with each other. We're going to take something and then we're going to learn it enough to do something with it. We're not necessarily going to become amazing experts, because our goal is to get our foot in the door. It's to either nail that tech interview, right? It's to pass an interview to showcase that we have the skills that the job opportunity is looking for. Or maybe it's because we want to spin this up in a project of our own that we're working on for like a side hustle or for fun, for our portfolios, or maybe it's for our job, right? At the end of the day, the purpose of this learning is to complete some tasks. So that's really good news for us, because it means we don't have to learn all of this and we don't have to learn it at like the expert level. We only need to learn enough to be able to do what we need to do to move forward. We can always learn more. Technologists and professional software developers are always investing in their learning, but we can time bound it, right? And having a very specific concrete problem that you're working on is really, really helpful for that. Awesome sauce. Thank you, John. Yeah, React for Joy of Coding weekend. I love it. So good. So good. Excellent. So you don't have to learn all these. But if you do feel overwhelmed by this picture, we want to get your foundational skills ramped up so this picture looks exciting and not intimidating. And this is why some tech workers get stuck in these mid 50K jobs for years or laid off, while others start earning 100K or more in their very first year of coding. And the mindset and the approach to this picture. Is this picture overwhelming or is it energizing? If it's energizing, you are in the right place. You are ready to go 100K and more. If you find this picture like, oh gosh, this is so much work, yeah, that's a red flag that you might not be ready yet for that prime time. But let's get you there, right? It doesn't mean you can't. It just means you might not be right now in this moment. It's not yet, right? Awesome. So what skills do we want to learn here, right? Let's dive in a little bit, because that was a really, really big picture, right? That was a really big picture. So what do we want to learn? I'm assuming that you're here because you want to get a 6-figure job in tech, right? So assuming that's true, I would recommend that you pick 6 to 12 job ads in your local area. We want these to be dream jobs, folks, right? Don't just be like, okay, I would take this job, I would take this job, I would take this job. No, pick the jobs you're like, oh, this would get me excited. This lights me up. I would leap out of bed in the morning to do this work. That's the kind of jobs you want to find. Because right now you're picking, right? You are picking your future, basically, right? So pick 6 to 12 jobs that get you really excited for your future. That's just really going to help all the way around. Okay, so let's take an example. Let's say somebody really wants to become a full stack software developer. Okay, so let's just skim through this. Look at what technologies are jumping out. We got React, Next, GraphQL, HTML, CSS, TypeScript, Postgres, right? Let's take a couple other ones. Okay, so junior front-end engineer, we've got Apollo, right? We've got Figma, React. There's a lot of overlap here, right? Here's another junior full stack role, right? These positions are all in the 60 to 120K range, right? Node.js, AWS, React UI, right? So there's a couple technologies, but a bunch of these keep repeating. So if I'm going to pick a skill to learn in a weekend, I'm going to pick a skill that's in demand in my local area. And what you'll find is that different geographic regions have different flavors, right? Like I think Atlanta, Georgia is like a C# area, right? Like Boston has a certain flair for certain flavor of technology. Same with, Silicon Valley. Like everybody's got their different tech stacks, and they tend to permeate because people work in a geographic location and they get job opportunities in that location and they mix it up together. They go to meetups. And so you end up with these tech regions that have different flavors to them. So you can find out what the local flavor is for you. Now you might be asking, now wait a minute, Dr. Emily, I want a remote job. Awesome sauce. That is super cool. Here's the thing, that remote positions are some of the most competitive on the planet. And if this is your first coding position, it's going to be a lot harder to get your foot in the door if you're at 100% remote shop. We have had students do it, right? I don't want to say it can't be done, but typically it's going to require a super strong connection because you're competing against every developer on the planet that might want to work there. But here's the loophole, right? Is that small regional businesses typically can only hire legally in their region, right? If it's a salaried position, like with W-2s and all that stuff. And you can't just hire anywhere. You have to have an HR presence in every state where your employees have their home address. This is true for remote companies too. So what ends up happening is you can have like small regional companies, right? These are still big companies with like hundreds of employees, but they're not national. And they are only going to be able to hire in a geographic region. And if you live in that geographic region, you might even be able to work remotely, but you don't have all that competition. There's way less competition when you're focused on a specific geographic area. And so that's going to make it a lot easier for you to get your foot in the door. And so that's why I'm recommending that you specifically look in your geographic region, because you're going to have the best chance of success of getting your foot in the door there. Their foot in the door. Let me make sure I say that clearly. Awesome sauce, Sam. Thank you so much. Super, super good. All right. And to be honest, if you're a first-time coder, this is your first professional opportunity, I do actually recommend going in person because it's a lot, just for a little bit, not forever. I wouldn't want to do 100% in person myself either, right? I had a 100% in person job and I created a remote opportunity for myself. I get it. But when you're just getting started, it is helpful to have some in-person FaceTime because you get to connect with people more easily. When you're 100% remote, creating connections, building community becomes a lot harder. You have to be a lot more intentional about it. There's no bumping into somebody in the bathroom or at the water cooler or in the, the team's kitchen, right? You have to intentionally seek out that interaction. And so when you're just getting started, just getting your foot in the door, I do recommend having some in-person presence to build and solidify, like to build your connections, to grow your learning and understanding, learn the lay of the land, the politics, and really like gain your footing and solidify your position so that you're not the first person getting laid off, because everybody knows and loves your work, right? So there is a strategy to getting a remote job that really, really works well for you, but it begins with a little bit of in-person, just a little bit, to help grease those wheels. I have had beginning students go 100% remote, and it was challenging for them to connect with their team and connect with their boss. So there are like unique challenges in terms of your growth as a professional technologist in being 100% remote right away, right? I'm not saying within 3 months you can't like transition to be mostly remote, right? Or even a year. But the idea is that in your very first role, there's some significant advantages, strategic advantages to your career and to the competition and lowering it so it's easier to get a job if you're looking in your local geographic area. Super awesome. All right, folks. So once you've looked at these local jobs in your area and identified, some technologies that you think would be fun to learn and seem to be in demand, right? Awesome. Now we get to move forward. And what technologies do they have in common? I saw a lot of React, so maybe that would be good. Maybe Next, right? And if you're in the Tech Joy Career Academy, right, you might pick a technology that complements something you're learning on the internship already, right? Something like that. So you want to pick the most common ones. And then this is the fun part. You get to build a project around that, right? This could be considered a portfolio project, but to be honest, at the end of the day, portfolio projects don't get jobs, experience does. So really, this would be used to augment and go alongside hands-on experience building for actual software clients. So this would be, for instance, in the Tech Joy Career Academy, our students typically are working with either React or Next.js on an internship, delivering working software for an actual client with live users. So it's deployed into production. And so they might be working in either React or Next.js, and maybe they want to make sure they're well-rounded and they want to venture into TypeScript or learn some other kind of new language. Maybe they want to do Ruby or Go, whatever it is. And so this kind of weekend project would be great to augment that experience, not replace it, right? Because at the end of the day, that hands-on experience is the most important thing, but you want to be well-rounded on the job market. And especially, this is a really easy way to appeal to your local market and really showcase your talents. So you pick the most common ones and you build some kind of a project around that. And we'll talk about what that project could be in just a second. Awesome. So what are we going to build, right? What are we going to build? So I have one crucial piece of advice. Build something you've built before. I'm going to repeat it again because it is so important. Build something you've built before. Okay. And I'm going to tell you why. If you're a beginner, if you say, wait a minute, Dr. Emily, I've never built anything before, that's okay. I have some advice for you. We'll get to it at the end. So right now I'm talking specifically to people who have built projects before and have some kind of experience with what they're building. Build something you've built before, or at least as close as you can without being bored out of your mind, right? Because I know building the exact same thing that we built before is super annoying. But let's say, for instance, you once built a to-do app. Maybe you can convert it into a trivia app. Or if you did like a movie database, maybe now you're going to do a recipe database, right? So you can vary it a little bit just to keep things interesting for yourself. But the closer you can be to what you've already built before, this is super powerful. It allows you to focus on the differences between the languages. This is crucial for learning faster because the only differences you're seeing are going to come from the language or framework, not the solution you're building, right? If you build something completely different, like let's say you built something kind of like a niche version of Yelp, and now you want to build a Space Invaders game. Well, are the differences because of the language or framework you're learning, or the differences because the problem you're solving is so different? That's going to be a distraction. It's going to delay your learning. So there is a strategic way that we can actually focus our attention so we can learn faster. And that's by keeping all the other variables, right, in the process the same, as constant as possible. So the only variable is the language and framework that you're using, right? You're using on the same computer, right? You're building the same thing. So the differences that you come across in rebuilding something you've built before are all due to the language. This is the absolute fastest path to learn, because any differences you are directly hooking in to a depth of knowledge from building something before, right? So this is really, really awesome. And no worries, if you haven't built anything before, I've got a recommendation for you at the end. Okay. I do recommend picking something useful or playful, like that you could hand to someone else, right? Sharing with others is a super powerful way to boost your confidence and get ideas for the next new feature to add, which will help you grow your learning, right? And step into new opportunities, new things to learn. Because sometimes we build something, it's like, okay, cool, I put it on a shelf, I built that thing. Well, now what? How can you keep going? How can you take that and go further? Okay. And again, folks, if anyone has tried to learn a language or framework in a weekend, I would love to hear it. If you can drop any insights or experiences in the chat, I'd love to see it. So now that we've thought about what skills we're learning and what we're building, how are we going to build it? How are we going to build it? Okay. And to be honest, we're going to build it the same way we build any software project, following, the best practices for that. But there's ways we can do this faster, right? I think one of the challenges that we sometimes face, most technologists, we love to learn. And it can be challenging to know when to stop learning. So knowing what to learn, prioritizing what to learn, but also knowing when to stop is really, really important. Really important. And I'm going to say something a little, it could be contentious. We will see. I'm going to throw this out here, folks. If you're early, if you're a beginner, this doesn't apply, right? But if you are someone who's advanced, for instance, in the Tech Joy Career Academy, if you're an intern, I am going to stake a claim out here that coding tutorial videos are a waste of time. And there's a reason why we've front-loaded the Academy experience with videos, and you will not find any towards the end. Because at the end of the day, for most professional programmers, coding videos are a total waste of time. And I want to let that sink in, because many of us, when we first started, lived by coding tutorials. But once you hit a certain point in your learning, they are the least efficient way of gaining knowledge. Because at the end of the day, professional programmers know how to learn from the system itself. So I'm not saying don't follow a tutorial, like a README, brilliant, super fast. It moves as quickly as you do, right? As quickly as you can type, right? And we can talk about AI as well if you guys have questions on that, on where that can come in, because you can have AI give you that README as well. But coding videos where you just like follow along, follow the leader, those are going to be a waste of time, because for a couple of reasons. One is it takes a long time, right, to watch someone else doing something. They're passive. So you're not practicing your ability to like execute and run and see what's happening, right? When you read something, you see this one view of the world, and then you have to put it into practice to see it for yourself. You hit the run button yourself, and it either works or it doesn't. And either works like it said it would in the tutorial, or it doesn't. And there's a lot of really important learning that happens in that moment. But when you just watch a video, it's just passive. They're doing it for you, right? And so, written getting started instructions like a README are awesome. But yeah, video tutorials, you want to graduate from them. And I would say if you want to earn 100K, you probably need to graduate from those faster. If you want to be a six-figure software developer, let me clarify, if you're already in tech, like IT or databases, and you just want to add, or maybe even data science, and you just want to add coding skills to your resume to increase your salary over that 100K mark, that's fine. You can get away with still watching coding tutorial videos. It's still going to be slower for you, but it's possible. But if you want to be like a full stack six-figure software developer, mobile developer, architect, like if you're going on that pathway that starts at six figures and goes up and up and up to hundreds of thousands of dollars or $1 million, coding tutorials are going to be a waste of your time, right? What you can do is watch 2 to 5 minute snippet videos, right? Watching somebody do something so you can learn from it, that's totally fine. But sitting down for hours and hours and watching these coding videos, It's not the fastest path to learn, and it's not the fastest path that professional developers use, right, to actually build working software for high quality. Awesome sauce, Braden. Braden's super advanced. He just was promoted to junior dev at the TechJoy Career Academy. And so he learns so much more by building stuff than by watching coding tutorials. So kudos to Braden for having flipped that switch, because in the beginning, we're not there yet, right? But as we learn, this is how you know you've kind of like arrived. That helps give you that confidence that, oh, I can learn from the coding system and Googling, text without having a video. If you require a video, you're not yet ready to go on the job market for full stack coding jobs. If you can, rock on, keep it going, right? And if you're still uncertain about it, if you can figure out what's happening on your own and get it done, get it working, you are ready, right? You are ready for prime time. Awesome sauce, folks. Because I've also seen students to the other realm where to feel like they're ready, they have to know so much. They're like at the software architect level that's like 200K, but they've never had an entry-level job because they just kept learning, because they never felt that sense of inner confidence of like, I've done it, I've arrived, right? So I've seen it go to both extremes, right? So you just want to be, realistic about where you are. Super awesome, folks. Super awesome. When you're building, you want to practice what's called test-driven development, okay? And you can either do this formally, like red, green, refactor, or you can at least predict what you expect the output to be, right? So you want to build small incremental changes, right? Because this is when you're coding without a video tutorial, it's like tightrope walking without a safety net, right? Like you're living it. You're doing it. This is exactly what six-figure software developers do every single day in their day job. And when there's no one you can turn to who just like immediately knows the answer, you have to develop differently, right? That's the thing. In the beginning, we can get away with giving you videos and you can use them to learn, because no one's ever going to get stuck in those beginning problems forever, right? Like somebody out there is going to know the answer. But whenever you get on a real software project, you're building something that has never been built before. Like no one knows the answer. You have to figure it out. You don't have to figure it on your own, right? There's experts that can be at your disposal to help you. But at the end of the day, you have to figure it out. And because of that, it changes the way we need to develop, because no one is coming to save us and give us the answer. We have to learn how to figure it out for ourselves. And so this is where test-driven development comes in, where we build super small incremental changes. Because think about it. If you sit down and you write this huge application, like hundreds of lines, and it doesn't work, where's the bug? What do you need to fix to get it working? I don't know, somewhere in that hundreds of lines. Or we can make our lives easy, and we can make it easy for ourselves by making one tiny change. So here is where the tutorial comes in. Just getting the vanilla hello world up for your language or framework. Yes, use a tutorial for that if it helps. Use ChatGPT. Get something running that gives you output, right? Create something you can run and observe the output, your hello world. Get that running as soon as possible. And that is going to be the biggest incremental change that you will make to your project, because most frameworks have special magic rules. I like to call them magic, right? But they have special rules about where files need to go so they can deliver the application correctly and appropriately. So there's going to be a lot of like specific pieces, like you have to have this file in this folder, and if you don't have an index.yaml over here, right? Like you have to actually have all the setup correct. But once you have that setup correct, you want to make the smallest changes possible to move towards your goal, because it's going to be so much easier to learn and figure out what's not working when you've made the smallest change possible. Okay. So you're going to build small and make sure before you run, this is crucial, to plan out what success looks like. You could write it as a formal automated test, which would be awesome to experience having that test framework. Or it could just be, hey, when I run this, I expect to see hello world, or I expect this to happen. Just taking that moment to determine what do you think will happen, and then confirming, yes, that is in fact what happened, right? When I ran it. That is where the learning happens, because if it worked, awesome, your intuition or your learning is aligned with reality. If it doesn't, now you can focus on just that little piece. It's super, super important. And then you keep repeating this process until your prototype does something interesting. Now, This is really important. Keep it time bound. Remember that picture I showed earlier of all the technology there could be on the planet? There's so much that could be out there, right? That you could learn. There's always more to learn. There's always more to build. But at some point, we have to say stop and move on, right? And so you want to really make sure that you lock in this time bound. It doesn't mean that if you took a weekend and you only did this much and you wanted to do this much, that you don't return to it next week and do more. But you bound it and you make sure that you're taking the steps and the actions that are also helping you move forward, like maybe on the job hunt, like getting your resume feedback, building connections. Being on the job market has a lot of moving parts. And so we want to make sure that the learning part, which is often super fun, right? We want to keep it time bound and visit it next weekend, right? It doesn't mean you can't come back, but you want to make sure that you're putting a timer on it, because I've seen people learning for months and months and months when they could have been working on getting a job. Right? Or getting the hands-on experience. That's really the number one thing that's most important. All right, folks, if you have any experiences, trying to learn a language or a framework in a weekend, I would please drop in the chat. I'd love to hear it. So now for the beginners out there, right? What if you've never built anything before, right? If you're a beginner, please master the basics first, okay? To be honest, the language doesn't really matter. So I'm an educator. I've seen the basics taught. I've either taught them myself or seen them taught in Python, Java, JavaScript, C. I don't think I've seen them in Ruby, but I've seen early stage Ruby projects. There's so many languages out there. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. However, as an educator, I do recommend Python first because it is the closest language we currently have to English. I do not recommend JavaScript first at all, because web systems, which JavaScript is a web language, are the most complex we have on the planet. So when you're a beginning learner, it's hard to know, well, is this just a quirk of JavaScript, or is this something that's true for all languages? When your if doesn't work, when your loop doesn't work, when your hello world doesn't work, is it because you don't have JavaScript set up right? And that's actually can be kind of complex. Or is it because you didn't understand the language basic? And so that's why I recommend Python, because it's the closest we have to English and allows you to separate out the complexities of just web systems, like client server interactions, like error requests, bad handling, local host versus servers. Like there's just so much domain knowledge that comes with web programs that you just don't have to worry about in Python. You can run it in your web browser. It's super easy. You can run JavaScript in your web browser too, but you still have to pay attention to HTML and CSS and like all these things. So it makes it harder to scaffold your learning because you're learning everything at the same time. And what I hate to see is students giving up in frustration because JavaScript was challenging to learn, because it's not a great first language. But once you have one language down, you have these 7 basics, loops, ifs, functions, like variables. When you have that down, picking up another language is not that hard. In fact, we teach multiple languages inside the TechJoy Career Academy because professional developers pick the right tool for the job, and they're not afraid to learn a language in a weekend to be able to solve a problem. And in fact, when it comes right down to it, there's basically like 2 major flavors of languages. C-style languages like Java and JavaScript, and there's scripting languages like Python or Bash. Some of them offer object-oriented. Once you have those basic fundamentals down, every language is just a little bit like the others. Like when I sit down to implement something, I might implement it in 1 or 3 languages, right? Like I might, like for instance, in my graduate degree, when I was doing research, I was often building scripts quickly in Perl. If I needed to run them a lot, I'd write a bash script for the front end for it. And then once it was ready for prime time, I'd re-implement it in Java so I could integrate it into an IDE like Visual Studio or PyCharm, JetBrains, something like that. And so I would just use whatever technology was correct for the job, right? Like that's how you get really fast, right? Is really choosing to use a technology that makes your job easy. If you're afraid to learn new things, you will never get to that moment, and it's going to constantly, kind of show up and limit where your career can go. So I recommend Python. If you haven't, seen the 7 basics before, I'm dropping a link here. I don't know if I can drop it. Let's see if I've got it here. Here we go. We'll see if I can make it as a comment here for you folks. Okay, we've got this here. I'll post it as a comment. So join us, with the 7 basics. I've had multiple students tell me that they learned more in 2 hours than in 2 years following this approach. Now, for a beginner, how do you learn a language in a weekend? The short answer is you may not. You might, right? If you're like really, really fast at picking things up, you might. But what I would set the expectation for yourself to give yourself grace is that if you're a beginner and you've never built anything meaningful before, the first time you build a project that is actually useful to someone, expect it to take 1 or 2 months working 2 to 4 hours a day. Okay. So don't expect to build something complete and useful in a weekend. You could build something quick in a weekend for sure. Is it going to be useful? If you're a beginner, it will probably be something that's been done before. There's nothing wrong with that. That's totally fine, right? But eventually you want to get to the point where you can build something useful to someone in a weekend. And that's where the magic happens. You will go faster as a beginner if you have experts on speed dial. And we do have a ton of amazing experts on speed dial inside the Tech Joy Career Academy. So I'm going to drop that link just for anyone that's interested in checking us out. Now, I have a super, super awesome opportunity for you guys. All right. And again, any questions, pop them in the chat. I would love to answer them. If you've tried to learn a language or framework in a weekend and either worked or didn't, I would love to know that. So please pop in the chat, especially if you've got more insights into this, of how this has worked for you on the ground. I'd love to hear it. So I have an amazing opportunity for you guys. I am going to do a live training next week, but you guys get to pick. How cool is that? So I have a really cool opportunity for you. I'm going to be hosting a live workshop next week, and I'm planning to go through all of these topics, but which one do you want to see next week? Which one do you want to see next week? Which one do you want to see first? I'm posting it as a comment in the chat. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, you will see it. And please go to that link and tell me what you'd like to see. What would you like to learn about next? And we'll get that for you. All right. If you're not in the Tech Joy Career Academy, but you'd like to be, enrollment is currently closed, but we're going to reopen it next week. We can't, for the level of support we offer each individual student, right? We can't offer completely open enrollment admissions, right? So we're going to focus this week on serving our students, and next week on getting new folks into the door after the workshop. So we're going to have a live workshop first. All right. So our focus will be on that. So, but if you'd like to check it out and you'd like to learn more about it, I will drop that link below as well for you. I can't wait to see what you guys pick for the workshop. I'm super excited. So whatever the winner is, I'm going to look at these tomorrow and pick something either tomorrow or Thursday and start mapping it out and planning and advertising. So you guys will see that. All right, folks. Awesome sauce. Any other questions or comments? I would love to see it. Stay tuned, folks. You're doing rocking work. I hope if you find this useful, give me a thumbs up. Let me know so we can keep delivering awesome, awesome lives like this for you. So next week's workshop, I'm super excited. It'll either be something like on the tech interview, on the 7 basics in JavaScript. I've resisted it for years, but I get that people really want to learn it this way. Okay, so I'm considering creating that if it's by popular demand. And also we've got, object-oriented coding in Python. I've done it in Java a bunch, but we'll do the Python version of that. Programming your life for success. That's like a more general purpose workshop I've been planning out. So I just want to know what really gets you excited. What would you like to learn about? All right, folks. Awesome, awesome sauce. Excellent. So good to see everybody today. Don't be a stranger. And we'll keep rock and rolling. Oh, good. I got a question from Key. What kind of project would I suggest to learn C#? So Key, if you've done something before, right? If you've done something before, I would do that project. I know it sounds really unexciting. C# is object-oriented. So you would probably do something that had to do with some kind of a data or information storage. Yeah, things I used to do, like really like basic object-oriented projects would be like a bank account system, right? Where you'd have an account. That's a really common one. You have a list of accounts. You can do like a movie database or music database, board games. That's something you could do. But like, Key, your internship project, doing like a real stripped down version of that in C#, maybe not web, right? Maybe just something you can run on the desktop. I would start with a command line interface, right? Do something real stripped down, basic, bare bones, just so you can understand the idea of, C#. And C# is object oriented. So I do highly recommend, Key, we have a bonus training on object oriented programming in Java. The first few weeks are just basics, and then it goes deeper into advanced software engineering concepts. I highly recommend at least the first couple weeks where we're building a boxcar, if that makes sense. So that would be really, really helpful. Excellent. Awesome sauce, Key. Love it. Keep up the great work, folks. John found that Battleship was fun in Python and then into Java. Now you do it in React. That's awesome. See? And what you can do is you can pick like a kind of like a pet project that you do in all the languages. And it's a really useful skill to be able to be like, okay, this is the thing that I always build. And now you just have it in your back pocket. Every time a new language comes out, it's like, okay, let me go build my thing, right? Whatever that is, my pet project, whether it's Battleship or something else in that language. Great idea. Awesome sauce. Ooh, I love this, Sam. Oh, I wonder if I should update my survey with regular expressions because that's a good one. So Sam is asking, are there projects that lend themselves well to mastering regular expressions? Anything with text. If you're in the Tectoy Career Academy, Project 3, working with the Austin text is the place where we address regular expressions if needed. Any kind of number chunking for text. So word frequencies is a really common one. I did some really fancy pants analysis. It's called natural language processing on text in my PhD thesis. And so like, I would say you could analyze word morphology or stemming or like searching, right? Searching deals with words and text, anything where you're dealing with numbers and text, right? So you convert that text into some kind of a number. So recognizing if something is a verb, if it's a plural verb, it's a possessive, right? What types of words are, those are all really good regular expressions. Parsing, right, is also really good with regular expressions. So good. But yeah, regular expressions, that one, how did I learn it? Because that one took me a little bit to get the hang of. I had to really sit down and know it. But I was studying how to count words, and I was taking in data, and then I was kind of morphing it. So like screen scrapers are really good. What's that? Right? Like a web scraper where you're trying to like get data off of a website, but they don't have an API that makes it easy. So you're literally scraping the data off of their webpage. That's a great way. Like, so building a data set is another great way to use regular expressions. Yeah. I don't recommend book learning at all for this one because they're really simple. If you had to learn them in a book, right? If you really did have to do it that way, I love Perl regular expressions. I know this isn't a cool language anymore. Nobody uses it. But I love Perl because it was the first language that made sense to me because this book was written by the author of the language. So in it are all the whys. Why are languages like this? This book had the answers for me. I mean, granted, this is like decades ago, right? But Perl has a really robust and simple regular expression framework. You can run them on the command line. You could do like set or awk, right? Like those are Unix-based scripting tools that provide regular expression support. I hate Java and Python regular expressions. So if you are doing it, I would start with a simpler language just to get the hang of it, like Perl, because it's just simple. With Java and JavaScript, there's all these backslashes. So you have to like double escape them. It's a huge pain. It's hard to read and it's hard to reason about and learn. So anyways, yeah, I don't recommend a book to learn it. I recommend doing it, definitely. Just as we've been talking about now, like pick something. So build a data set for sure. Awesome sauce, Key. Super excited to help. All right, folks, this is awesome. Great questions. Keep up the great work. If you have any questions after the fact and you've missed the live, don't hesitate to comment. I'm happy to support you and answer your questions. All right, folks. And stay tuned for next week. If you answered on that survey that you'd like to join us, I'm going to be hosting a live workshop next week. And then I would love to have you there and let you know about it if you're interested in joining us. All right. Academy students, I hope you'll all join us as well. All right. Have a great rest of your day, folks. Peace.